Welcome you back to the Patrick Netherton Show, 1130 The Tiger. He's Rogers, I'm Patrick, and we are pleased to welcome in one of the legendary coaches in LSU basketball history and Louisiana basketball history as well. He is John Brady, now working with Chris Blair, and boy, having to drag Blair along in every broadcast. I tell you what, it's tough times for John Brady having to deal with Chris Blair on a weekly basis. Coach, how the heck are you, man?
I don't know about that last statement. I bet you ask some people, they think it's just the opposite.
No.
That Chris is dragging me along.
No, we all know that you have to carry Blair on a weekly basis, and I say that obviously Chris and I are friends, so I can say that about him. Hey,
he's very good.
He's very good. Really. No, absolutely. Yeah. Hey, before we get into LSU and whatnot, got to see you from across the way. You were there with your old buddy Tim Floyd. Watching a couple of guys that you got to match up against in your day. Mike McConaughey, of course, you got to face a few times. Watching just a random UNO Northwestern State game. Now, obviously, you have history with UNO. Floyd has history with UNO. You both have history with Mike McConaughey. But I'm curious, when you go to a game and you're not working, obviously when you're an analyst doing an LSU game, you have to look at it critically. Do you watch the game? Are you paying attention to it? Is it just, hey, give me some nachos and let me chat with my guy over here? What do you do when you're just casually at a game that you have no real involvement in?
Well, it's a little of both. Tim and I have been friends for a long time, and he and Mike McConaughey were roommates at Louisiana Tech. Mm-hmm. They go back a long way as well, and I've gotten to be really good friends with Mark Schlesinger out at UNO. I go out watching practice from time to time, and we have a good friendship. But Tim and I had played golf the day before, and he was at his place in his fishing camp over in Pearl River on the lake over there, and we just met up over there, had dinner, and went to the game, and we sit up there and we watch, we talk about it a little bit, and we rehash old memories, and UNO, I was there 9 months with Tim, 10 months that one year when we won like 17 in a row and finished 17th in the country that year, and it's a good place. Ron Maester was the AD there. He was just spectacular as the AD, and we had a good time and won some games, but we just sit up here and have a good time. We don't critique anybody.
Yeah.
But Tim, like I am, we're both in a good place now. And somebody came up to him. It's really funny. That particular night, Chicago was playing New Orleans in the Smoothie King that night, and somebody came up and said, "Hey, Tim, how come you're not going to the Chicago-New Orleans game?" He said, "What I want to go to that game for? Both those teams fired me."
Exactly.
He said, "I don't want to go to see them guys."
Oh, I don't blame him at all. Absolutely. And by the way,
we enjoyed it.
Yeah, Schles, by the way, comes out of the Mike McConaughey coaching tree too, so it's all one big happy circle.
Yeah, that's right. And he worked for Mike for a long time and had some success there with him as well.
Yeah.
And he's doing a nice job at UNO, particularly the last 2 or 3 weeks. UNO's won like 4 out of 5, and so they've got some momentum going into the tournament. So I'm happy for Mark. He's a good guy, good coach. And Mike's been doing it forever. Tim and I did ask, I wonder why McConaughey does this. He's like working for nothing. He's done it so long. And so, but it's in his blood. He loves to do it. He loves Northwestern, and he's done a wonderful job. He'll be in the Louisiana Sports Hall of Fame one day, I'm sure.
Oh, no doubt about that. He's the winningest coach in the history of Louisiana college basketball. All right, let's chat a little bit about the LSU Tigers and what has been sort of a bizarre kind of up and down year. You've seen them win some games. I don't want to say games they shouldn't have won because they're obviously talented enough to beat anyone in the league. But they've won some games that were tough ones, and they've lost some games that they should have won. You've obviously been there on that sideline before. You know how to deal with the emotional ups and downs of kids. Is what we saw this year sort of a normal thing for a squad that is a mixture of, really talented freshmen, a couple of young kids, transfers, a couple of veterans? I mean, is that what you sort of expected to see from this team this year?
Well, there's a couple of factors in that I think. And I think the COVID thing, the situation, the practicing, not practicing, changing of games, not having a consistent schedule, some unpredictability of when we're going to practice, what games are we going to play, having games called off. I think that lended itself to some inconsistent of play all over the league. And if there's one predictable thing about the SEC this year, outside of maybe Alabama, it was the unpredictability of how these teams played. You know, every time I got feeling good about Tennessee, they'd lose a couple, and I scratched my head. Every time I started feeling good about Florida, the same thing happened to them. And I've said it about the Tigers, too. Every time I started feeling really good about the Tigers, something would happen that would throw them off kilter. And I think that's the thing with LSU fans this year with this particular team. Will Wade won 11 SEC games. He's the first coach in LSU history to win 3 straight years of double-figure SEC wins. He started better than any coach ever that's taken over the LSU program. But now, you know, he took it over in a different situation. You know, Dale took it over, it wasn't any good. I took it over, and it was terrible. Will took it over, and it was a little bit better than what Dale and I inherited.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that the thing that says scratch LSU fans, it's as successful as Will Wade has been this year, it's the swings of the team. There are times when the LSU team looks like it's the best team in the SEC, and then they've had these big swings. There's nothing like in the middle where they lost in overtime or something. It's either we win big against a quality team, or sometimes we get beat and look like sometimes we really aren't involved and don't want to play. So I think that's the biggest issue LSU fans have had in scratching their heads about the swings of play of this team from really, really excellent basketball to sometimes, wow, where did that come from? And I think that's what is disturbing about it. Now, can they go to the SEC tournament after coming off 2 straight wins and win that tournament? I think they can. I think this team is explosive. I think offensively it's really good. I think they have to shoot the ball well, though. They haven't been able to win games when they shoot poorly from the floor. So the field goal stat is something I talk about all the time with this LSU team. And every time LSU wins the field goal stat, they win the game. So it's going to be something to follow as we try to string 3 or 4 games together, maybe win the SEC tournament, or at least win 2 or 3 in a row in an NCAA tournament situation.
Talking to John Brady, former LSU head coach and now analyst on the LSU radio network. And you mentioned the swings, and that's kind of what I was getting at when you look at this team, because I look back at the Georgia game on the road late in the year. You just come off of a couple of nice wins. You go to Georgia, and I'm watching, and look, I'm calling games for Northwestern. I don't get to see all the LSU games. A lot of times they're on at the same time, but I'm watching that game, and I see a team that looks disinterested defensively. They look like they just don't even care about that side of the ball. Now, look, there's plenty of times when they can go outscore a team. They put up 90. The other team can't hang with that offense, but they looked disinterested defensively. Has that sort of been the Achilles heel of this team, is the ability to lock down defensively? When your shots aren't falling, you can still give great effort on the defensive side?
Yeah, I agree with that totally. I think that's a great point, and I think Will Wade's aware of that as well. So when we shoot the ball well, it seems like we get motivated to defend better on the other end. But in my thought process, if you can't score, you better defend. So if the shots aren't falling, which sometimes it's done for LSU, they haven't been able to win the game because they don't defend well enough on the other end to make up for the lack of shot making. But when LSU scores low 80s or higher, and they shoot 50% or right at 50% or better, they haven't lost a game this year. So it's something to win, I think, string some games together when they move into quality competition, maybe a semifinal game in the SEC tournament or a championship game in the SEC tournament, and get into the NCAA and hit some quality teams. They're going to have to defend a little bit better, because some of those teams are going to keep them from shooting the ball and making the baskets they normally make. And then can they win the game when they're not shooting it well? And I think that's why the base of your team needs to be established on the defensive end and the rebounding segment of the game to be able to keep games workable when you're not shooting it well.
Absolutely. Coach, I'm curious, were you Were you an analytics guy? I mean, I know you're talking about field goal percentage and rebounding and stuff, and that's kind of old tried and
Yeah.
true coach speak. But are you a Ken Palm guy? Are you a effective field goal percentage and offensive points per possession? Do you get into any of that?
Well, I used to keep points per possession. I thought that was always a key. If you could average a little over 1 point a possession,
Mm-hmm.
you've got an efficient team offensively. And then I would keep track of what have we done if we're playing man to man. Have they scored 2 or 3 times in a row, and it may influence me to change. But I'm never just totally bought into the analytics of what some of these young coaches do this year. Sometimes I feel like a bad shot's a bad shot. A 3-point shot, an ill-advised 3-point shot is not the type of quality shot we need. But some guys, that's all they want to do is shoot a 3 or drive the ball and shoot something at the rim, and they kind of give up the mid-range game. And I understand that. But still in all, with all of that offensively, you still have to guard it and rebound it. It's like today, I'll compare it to today's golf game. These guys drive the ball over 300 yards easy, every one of them. They hit irons like 200 yards like crazy. But, the game boils down in golf to what do you do 100 yards and in, and can you still putt the ball?
Mm-hmm.
Same thing for me in basketball. Can you still defend it and rebound it when you're not making threes, when you're not making baskets? What are you going to do on the other end when sometimes that's not happening for you?
You're kind of referencing Nate Oates without referencing Nate Oates at Alabama. His shot charts have looked just like the Houston Rockets of the last several years, where it's layups or it's threes, and there's nothing in the middle. In the NBA, that's one thing, but obviously Alabama's having great success with it this year, but they're also defending at a very high rate this year, which is something they haven't had. That you don't see a lot of these offensive-minded 3-point shooting teams actually defend well, but they're top 10 in points per possession defensively.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right on that, and that's the thing I said about Nate Oates' team this year when I've seen them play. The difference in this year's team and his team a year ago is this team is really good defensively in the half court. So if they are committed to that type of offense, which is great. But when the threes aren't going in, and they have scored in the 70s this year, and they like to score 80s or so like LSU does, but they can also hold teams in the 60s. And they're able to win a game without winning the field goal stat because they defend on the other end. And when those threes do start falling for them, if the game is still workable within 10 or 12 points, they can certainly make that up in a quick way. And I think that's the difference in his team is on the defensive end. I also told 2 years ago when Bruce Pearl went to the Final Four, I told him, I went back in the locker room and saw him before one of the LSU games, and I played against Bruce Pearl. We coached against one another. I've seen his teams play for a long time. His Final Four team was the best defensive team he's ever had, and he agreed with that, and I think that's why they got to the Final Four, because they could score it, but they also could defend it when they weren't making the baskets that they normally make.
Yeah, and Bruce is a big turnover guy too. We know that he will definitely get you turned over when his teams are playing well. All right, Coach. Before we let you go, talking to John Brady, former LSU head coach and now analyst on the LSU Radio Network. Just give me a quick breakdown of the side of the bracket that LSU is on. You've got Georgia, Missouri facing Arkansas. The winner of that game faces Arkansas. LSU's got South Carolina, Ole Miss. The winner of that one, potentially LSU and Arkansas in the semis. It's doable, certainly on that side of the bracket, but Musselman has done such a great job at Arkansas. They are a formidable opponent to look at in the semis.
Well, no question. But I think the Ole Miss South Carolina matchup is perfect for LSU. I know Kermit Davis doesn't like if he gets by South Carolina. I know personally he doesn't like his matchups with LSU. Mm-hmm. He hasn't been real successful with them. It's tough for Ole Miss because the baskets LSU can score. Ole Miss can generate points unless they really do a tremendous job of defending LSU. And then Arkansas, they came to Baton Rouge. Look, we beat them 20. I mean, it was they cut it at the end, but the game was over basically at halftime. Mm-hmm. LSU played one of its better games of the year in Baton Rouge against the Razorbacks. So I think winning that game at Missouri. I said after the game with Chris, this may be the biggest win of the year because it's going to throw us in third place, get us in a situation where we don't have to play number one, and we've got a chance to get to the final. And that's what can happen. And LSU can, if they get to the final, they can win the thing because they'll be so excited about playing. There's no telling what kind of baskets that Tam Thomas and Javonte Smart can make when they get rolling.
Coach, you mentioned Kermit doesn't like his matchups with LSU. I've never heard a coach that actually says they like their matchups with anyone. It's always, we hate our matchups against this team. I've never heard a coach say, you know what, I really love our matchups in this ball game.
Well, let's say they're all bad, but some may be better than others.
There you go. There you go. Hey, Coach, enjoy yourself. We look forward to listening to you moving forward, and love to have you back on here before too long.
Anytime, guys. Thanks much.
All right. John Brady, former head coach of the LSU Tigers and now analyst on the LSU radio network.